Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete the grand finale of our Rimworld Anomaly Sea Ice Challenge with the transhumanist Paragons of Pandroth. In some ways, this is perhaps the biggest Rimworld finale I've ever done on this channel. This is not just the end of this series, but the end of a trilogy that began in late 2021 with Rimworld Ideology in the Cold Borg with the Cult of Jinx and its leader Specs, then took us through Rimworld Biotech in the tropical rainforest and deep into the mountains with the Believers of Boyo and their leader Light, only for 5 colonists, Maniac, Nazim, Vulek, Ellie and young Elpis, to end up on the sea ice to found the Paragons of Pandroth and transcend humanity in this Rimworld Anomaly playthrough. And after leaving off last time, we already find ourselves deep in the Anomaly endgame. The Void Monolith has been activated and we have survived several waves of entities and managed to activate 2 Void structures, but more are coming in about 1 day. One quick note before we get going, or rather a thank you. At the end of the last episode I briefly mentioned the Polar Bears International fundraiser that accompanied the entirety of this series. When I uploaded the last episode, we were roughly at $5,500 raised, and now, about a week later, we are already close to $6,500, so thank you very much for that. I honestly did not imagine that we could take it this far, and I am extremely grateful for anyone who donated. Now then, let's get to it. With Noctiliths and Gorehulks still roaming around, we occasionally need to clear some of them out to get our pawns outside our walls. Although Lauren here, who is suffering from a dark visions mental break, is perhaps straying a bit too far away from home, so we'll have Elpis skip her back inside and hope that she stays there. Afterwards, we watch as Vulek walls in the corrupted obelisk. Not only is its activity level steadily rising, which could cause problems at the most inconvenient moment, but I've also rewatched a few of the previous episodes and noticed that we should actually be very close to an important threshold at which we can command the obelisk to clone a specific pawn of ours. And so, once the wall is constructed, Elpis begins suppressing the obelisk, and afterwards resumes studying it. And there we are, just as I had suspected, we can now deliberately trigger the obelisk's cloning mechanism. Although this could of course have unwanted side effects, we saw that in Orley, Ellie's duplicate, who unfortunately developed organ decay. Now, we are not going to clone anyone just yet, but we're going to base parts of our strategy for this second half of the Anomaly endgame upon our opportunity to do so. In the meantime, Vulek shoots another Gorehulk to protect our lifter bots, who are clearing the base of corpses, only for 9-year-old Roman to burn them all in a Molotov-fueled inferno a few moments later. Then we are informed that Nazim has become addicted to Psychite, a possibility that we more or less decided to accept when we opted for the High Life meme as our 4th one, and well, we have got plenty of Yayo still in storage, so I'm not too worried about it. With only 2 hours left until the next set of void structures arrives, we then also receive a message that the unnatural darkness that has been lingering for several days now will fully set in soon, and that means anyone wandering outside of lit areas will take damage. So we're constructing a few last lights around the base, but shortly after, our sea ice home is shrouded in complete darkness. This also quickly reveals a few areas I overlooked when installing lights. No problem though, thankfully Elpis knows the solar pinhole psycast and can quickly place a few light sources anywhere they're needed. Just in that moment then, the void structures arrive, 3 this time, all of them once again protected by metal horrors. Needless to say, to advance to the next stage of the Anomaly endgame quest, we once again need to activate all 3 of these, and each time we do, we will trigger a response, and you saw last time that only one unfortunately mixed group of enemies can do severe damage. Now we're going to use more of Elpis' psi focus here to also place several solar pinholes near our defense stations, mainly to actually be able to see what's going on, but also because the Noctols thrive in darkness, while they receive severe stat penalties in lit up areas, and we might need to fight a few of them while we take on the metal horrors. No need to make them any stronger than they are. In the meantime, we have also manufactured 2 mech gestation processors for Mechanical Lauren. These can simply be installed without the need for a medical procedure, and each one boosts her mech gestation speed by 33%. Very useful, since we are still trying to gestate a Centurion, and this should speed up the process slightly. Sadly, we have now run out of signal chips to make more, but we might acquire some in due time. For now, you can see it already, it's time to hunt metal horrors. We're going with the usual setup here, although I don't think this will cause too much trouble. Elpis places another pinhole to safely get close to our enemies, who then swiftly begin to rush our young colony leader. Time to retreat, set up all the explosives, and watch the carnage unfold. Roman immediately sabotages the mission by throwing a grenade not over but at the wall, but thankfully our ghouls are sturdy enough to withstand that. Apart from that, the fight goes relatively smoothly. Elpis helps out with a vertigo pulse here and there, and a particularly well-placed shot from Cursebane's Hellsphere cannon takes out a large number of the metal horrors. Still, that initial grenade mishap via Roman does have consequences late in the fight. Almost down to the last enemy, Kelly gets killed, although that's nothing a ghoul resurrection serum can't fix, and we have stockpiled plenty of those. So, while Nazim removes a tough spike from its holding platform and replaces it with a metal horror to increase bioferrite production, Kojiro injects the resurrection serum, and Kelly is back among the living, at least as far as a ghoul is concerned. And speaking of ghouls, this series has coined the Ghoul Police, and to celebrate the end of the series, the wonderful Tony Murchison created this fantastic design that you can now find in the Pete Complete store at shop.petecomplete.com. This is the first time I actually commissioned artwork specifically for this purpose, and I hope you like it as much as I do. But, like I said at the beginning of the video, this is not just the end of a single series, but the end of a trilogy, so I asked Tony for one more design, one to celebrate all 3 series. This design features the 3 colony leaders, Specs on the left, Light in the middle, and Elpis on the right, and this one too is now available. Again, visit shop.petecomplete.com to check them all out and to support me. For UK residents, there's actually free shipping available this weekend, so if you hurry, you might still benefit from that. And don't forget, you can also get merch via the Patreon-exclusive merch tier, which, depending on where you live, might in fact be a cheaper option for you because of shipping costs. Now, back to the action at hand. The broken plasteel walls are swiftly replaced, or repaired. We don't have any injuries to report, apart from those we already suffered last episode, so I would say let's go straight for round number 2. Once again, Elpis stays in the light to safely approach, casts another solar pinhole to get into sight range, and with the metal horrors and a few gore hulks on his heels, we conserve psi focus and instead use his sanguiphage long jump to head back. This fight then not really all too different from the previous one, no unfortunate grenade throws this time. Instead we slowly but steadily decimate the 16 metal horrors, and once again only our 3 frontline ghouls take some damage. So far this seems to be going very well, but of course the real fun begins once we activate those void structures. So time to rinse and repeat. This time the damages we need to repair are much more manageable, although repairing plasteel walls actually takes much longer than replacing them. Either way, with our defenses safely locked up once more, and Nightshade now also fully recovered, let us engage the 3rd and final group, this time from our southern defense station. Elpis makes a somewhat foolish mistake here, trying to cross a single tile of darkness and promptly takes some damage, although as a sanguiphage he should recover quickly. Attracting the metal horror's attention then once again not overly difficult, and so Elpis soon draws another group back to our base. This time a lone gore hulk causes a bit of trouble by sniping at us from afar, but nothing that a quick skip right into our death zone can't fix. Apart from that, it's business as usual. Elpis' Psi Focus is getting to critically low levels though, as we cast another vertical pulse here. We will definitely need to spend a little time replenishing that before we activate any of the void structures and draw in some real opposition. This group meanwhile suffers the same fate as the two before, and once again only our ghouls take some damage. Now at this point, the three void structures are largely unprotected and just waiting to be activated. And we're actually going to do so right away, at least somewhat. We have seen in the last episode that activating the void structures takes some time, about 35 seconds. And what we are now going to do is this: we're going to bring that timer down to exactly 1 second for all three structures, so that they can be activated pretty much immediately when the time is right. Doing this does not have any consequences whatsoever. The timer will remain at 1 second indefinitely, and thus we get full control over the precise moment that the void structures get activated. And this is probably the most crucial part of the plan I have to deal with whatever these structures will spit out once we activate them. More on that in just a moment. For now, we can watch as Ellie prepares structure number 3, and once that's taken care of, I think our people have earned a little breather. At this point, the most important thing is getting Elpis' Psi Focus back up, but the rest of the colony is of course not going to sit idly by. Instead, Ellie gets busy once more erecting an interesting construction here, just a few walls, and an IED anti-grain warhead trap right inside of them. The idea here is actually pretty simple. Should we get overrun, we can start shooting the walls, and then the trap, which is placed in such a way that it will affect any creature all the way up to our front door. The walls, meanwhile, keep the trap from triggering too early, which could be a colossal waste of resources. Elpis' meditation is then interrupted by an entity escape. A Devourer, a Bulb Freak, and Shambler Pete are seeking their way to freedom, a classic case for the ghoul police who intervene quickly. And I take it as a good sign that the only entity not attacking us is the Shambler Polar Bear. Sadly though, Shambler Pete is killed during all of this, but perhaps that too is rather fitting now that the series is coming to an end. The same is true for the Bulb Freak, but at least the Devourer can be recaptured, and who knows, we might soon be able to fill the remaining 2 platforms with something else. Then we watch as Lauren finishes work on a Mech Lord suit, essentially the Mechanitor's version of a recon armor, same protection but a massive plus 12 boost to mech bandwidth. And being a level 20 crafter pays off for Lauren here, who makes this a legendary suit. I had hoped for at least excellent quality to provide enough cold protection, but since she's going to wear this one herself, Lauren went all out. So once equipped, she now sports a bandwidth of 33, enough to control 6 Diabolus mechs for example, but for now we'll be content with just the one. We can also quickly jump over to Maniac, who went into a regeneration coma last episode, still better than getting killed I'd say, and while he's in that coma we might as well give him some new body parts. A bionic leg to replace the one he lost, and a bionic arm as well, because he lost 2 fingers, and that definitely warrants a full replacement all the way to the shoulder. I think this now makes him the first of our pawns who's got all 4 limbs artificially replaced, but he might not be the last. Still waiting for Elpis to max out his Psi Focus, we then suddenly also celebrate Roman's birthday. The little blue one just turned 10 years old and has once again reached the highest possible growth tier, allowing us to select 3 passions and 1 trait. And, well, for passions we'll double down on melee, taking after his father Maniac, and we'll add construction and medical as additional passions that are almost always good to have. For traits then, the choice could not be any easier. He is already nimble and we can pick tough here to make him a prime melee combatant. Obviously we'll do so. So, here he is, 10-year-old Roman, same viscolaire xenotype as his father, and therefore also deathless, another good argument for an eventual role on the front lines. Finally then, Elpis reaches 100% psi focus, and so we are now going to clone him. Yes, I think he is by far our most powerful pawn, and considering his role as leader and premier void provocateur, this only makes sense. Now, there is a risk of this backfiring, but at least his duplicate is not outright hostile. That can happen too, although spawning outside our walls is not ideal either. Now, this duplicate is identical to Elpis except for the artificial body parts. Everything else, conditions, skills, traits, and most importantly, psycasts, is the same. He also needs a name, and from the list of patron supporters in the naming rights tier and above, -1 was chosen, an anomaly in name as much as in existence, I'd say. Now, -1 does not have the same 100% psi focus that Elpis has, so he'll have to meditate for a little while too, of course after skipping himself into safety, putting on some clothes and snorting some yayo. Our colonists then have one more brief rest, and in the afternoon, not that time of day really matters anymore, the troops move out. Lauren also calls in a Diabolus, or rather 2 in this case. As you can imagine, we are going to need all the help we can get. Now, the idea here is the following. We've got 3 Sanguiphages, Elpis, Vulek, and now -1, which means we've got 3 pawns who can long jump. We're going to use that ability to get all 3 of them to a void structure, where we will wait until the Diabolus arrives. That actually happens a few seconds before -1 reaches his assigned structure, but a few seconds don't really matter. With all the Noctols and Gorehulks, the mechs will find plenty of enemies to keep themselves busy. At this point then, we are ready to activate all 3 structures at precisely the same time. Yes, exactly the kind of thing I warned against last time, but I have an idea, and I really hope it works. The most important part is getting our 3 Sanguiphages back behind walls before all hell breaks loose, as we are now about to receive all 3 waves of entities simultaneously. And you may ask yourselves why I'm putting our colony through that. Well, I think you'll just have to wait and see. Right, no arrows or jump to location button for the first group here, which does not actually mean that we're dealing with invisible creatures like sight stealers. You can see the Noctols on the right of the screen here. I think we're just not warned about them specifically because of the darkness. Enemy wave number 2 then, same deal, and number 3 arrives shortly after. Let us now take a look at what we're dealing with. Right, immediately we've got Shamblers, which were a huge problem last time, although this group is thankfully not quite as large. We've got the mechs still busy in the northern half of the map, a big group of 85 Gorehulks and some Noctols in the northwestern corner. These, I hope, will run into the mechs. From the west then, a large number of Shamblers. These could become a problem. And to the southeast, we've got the not at all ludicrous number of 102 Noctols, together with more Shamblers, and of course the Noctols to the east. Now, anything that's not a Shambler will likely run into our defenses, although considering what we're dealing with, that might not necessarily be a good thing. Still, this fight is more about lasting for a specific duration than about defeating all enemies, so while the Shamblers could cause trouble, they will also take their sweet time getting over to us. That is why the Noctosphere is now being deployed to the southeast to hopefully help with both the Noctols and Shamblers in the area, while the Mechanoids have seemingly engaged the enemies to the northwest. So far so good. At this point we should also talk about the monolith, which has entered a 4-hour twisting phase, and this is in fact all we need to do: survive for 4 hours. That is also why I think activating all 3 void structures at the same time is a good call. Otherwise we'd have to completely defeat 2 groups. This way, no matter how many enemies there are, if we can last for 4 hours, actually only 3 at this point, we're almost in the clear. Right, so the Noctosphere seems to be unleashing absolute hell, and we've also got sight stealers on the map. So far though, no enemies have actually reached our position, and the clock continues to tick down. Still, as you can see, the hordes are closing in, and well, this is why we cloned Elpis. -1 has access to the exact same abilities, including Neuroquake, which we are now going to cast after making sure that all pawns and mechs have entered the safe zone around -1. Now, not all entities will react to this, Shamblers are in fact immune, but it will drive enough other creatures on the map berserk so that a lovely chaos will unfold, and again, we just need to survive for a little while longer. Everything that delays our enemies works in our favor. Unfortunately, our 4 Muffalos, Yuval, David, Dot and Nibbler are now also affected by this, but their attacks are hopefully weak enough to not outright kill each other. -1 meanwhile goes into a psychic coma while Elpis remains standing, and that's very important, otherwise we'd have a problem in a few moments. Now, as you can see, all hell has broken loose around our base. The mechs have actually also engaged the Shamblers to the northeast, which is fantastic, and so with only 1 hour left, we make enemy contact for the first time in this fight. Then, another lucky coincidence that I cannot quite explain, the Nocuosphere ends its onslaught mode and immediately begins another one due to reaching 100% activity. I'm not quite sure how that happens. I'm pretty confident that we suppressed it regularly before sending it out. Either way, while this could in theory mean that our pawns now become targets, there's just so many enemies around the map, some of them much closer to the Nocuosphere, that we essentially get a second round of it for free. Meanwhile, the assault on our position has begun, and for now we're holding steadfast. Diabolus Cursebane single-handedly takes care of so many enemies here, gestating it was definitely a wise choice. Most importantly though, all of the aforementioned delays mean that we have already completed the 4-hour waiting period, and the Void Monolith is now beginning to distort. Something is about to happen. And, well, what happens is nothing less than the monolith spitting out a swarm of metal horrors itself right inside of our base, as well as conjuring a weird black sphere. Speaking of spheres, the Nocuosphere is now defeated and departs for good, but most importantly, we can now activate the Void Monolith itself. And that is what we want to do immediately with Elpis here, and also why it's very handy that he's not in a coma himself now. The message also says it on screen. By activating the monolith, Elpis can pass through a conduit to the void, and doing so will end the unnatural darkness and the entity's assault. The metal horrors summoned by the monolith have thankfully picked a fight with some of our mechs deeper in the base, so Elpis completes the activation without getting attacked. One more reason for the lack of interference may have been the complete destruction of our chem fuel stockpile, which has caused a big explosion and likely killed a good chunk of enemies. All of that is no longer of any concern to Elpis though, who now steps through to the other side and enters the void. Sadly, 2 of our lifter bots go down just as Elpis reaches the metal hell. Elpis now finds himself in a room of jagged metallic spikes, every surface is slick with dark fluid, and the air vibrates with power. This metal hell is a connecting channel to an inhuman hyper-intelligence. In the center of it all, a void node, and this here is in fact the last missing entry in our entity codex, the void node a rolling sphere of twisted psychic energy, and the bridge from our world into the black void. And well, there is only one thing we can really do here. Let's have Elpis touch the void. As he does, a sphere of writhing psychic energy rises before Elpis. He feels a presence inside his mind deeper than any normal human sense. He stands on the shoreline of an infinite black ocean of power. It beckons him in. Nearby architect devices support the sphere along fragile connections. Elpis could disrupt them, closing this link between worlds. Or he could step into the sphere and merge with the void. It's unknown what dark power could be gained from such an inhuman act. Right, decision time. Disrupting the link is the quote-unquote safe option, if you will. It won't entirely stop anomaly events from happening, but it will drastically reduce the threat they pose to us. However, and I think you saw this coming a mile away, Elpis will instead embrace the void. This won't turn down the anomaly threat level, but it will give Elpis some unique new powers. And after all, that is what this entire journey with the Paragons of Pandroth has been all about, transcending the mortal realm. What better way to do it than by becoming touched by the void itself? And so there we go. Elpis steps into the void, and the black ocean floods into him, overwhelming every sense, suffusing every thought in his mind. The void node has been refocused away from the world, towards one simple person. The void structures scream, then blink out of existence. Elpis has embraced the void. His story continues. And while we're going to let the credits roll here, I absolutely adore the music for this, by the way, those last two sentences are the important bit. Elpis has embraced the void, but the story continues, and so will this final episode. In just a moment, we will regain control of our people, who will then hopefully see the darkness lifted and the entities disappeared. What exactly happens to Elpis? Well, we will find that out too. Either way, there is one more goal to complete. When we began this trilogy, all the way back with the Cult of Jinx in the Cold Bog, we set out to find the Archonexus. We sold off that first colony in exchange for a map piece, founded a second one in the tropical rainforest with the Believers of Boyo, sold that too, landed on the sea ice, and can now sell this third colony as well to finally get the Archonexus' precise location. Reaching it will then end the game for good, and I have to warn you, it is perhaps a bit of an anticlimactic ending, but like so many things in Rimworld, I feel like it is more about the journey than the destination, and what a journey it has been. And I don't want to pat myself on the back here, but what a lovely coincidence it also was that I saved the transhumanist playthrough for last, a decision I made at a time when Anomaly was not even announced yet. In hindsight, the fit between Anomaly and the general direction of this colony worked perfectly in my opinion. Elpis, as the young transcendent leader, was a great element in telling this story of a lone sea ice colony fighting against the entities of the void, a fight that has now, at least partially, been won. And so we return to our sea ice home. The Anomaly quest has been completed, and as you can see, the darkness is lifted, and there are no more entities anywhere in sight. This does in fact pose a slight problem, because the two Diabolus mechs we called in are still active, albeit severely damaged. A few seconds later, Elpis then returns, now touched by the void. We'll take a closer look at what that means in just a second. For now, the still berserk Muffalo Yuval is escaping the pen thanks to a careless Shireen, and that unfortunately has dire consequences as Ghoul CJ beats it up and Cursebane's turret adds some extra damage. So we lose one Muffalo after all. This probably could have been avoided, although I have to say, it is a lot better than losing a colonist. Speaking of which, Elpis is now officially void-touched, doubling his psychic sensitivity, allowing him to regenerate 100 hit points per day, half the healing rate of ghouls, and he also no longer has to sleep. On the downside, he has also become inhumanized and no longer values social relationships. His animals, social and art skills also take a drastic hit, and he barely feels pain anymore. Finally, he has gained 4 uses of Death Refusal. All in all, I would say Elpis has truly transcended his mortal boundaries. And while he internalizes what just happened, Kojiro reacts to the chaos in a not entirely unsurprising way. He wants to slay all remaining entities we have captured, as those are the only ones that survived. But I think we'll keep them, if only as an example of the dangers out there. And while Kojiro gets put in a small cell to think about it all, the Ghoul Police goes on one last mission, bashing in the heads of 2 Diabolus mechs. Despite most of them already injured, their combined powers are too much even for a sturdy Diabolus, and so the first one goes down after just a few swings, soon to be followed by number 2. Now the rest of the story is quickly told. While repairs are underway, the 2 signal chips we recovered from the mechs are turned into mech gestation processors for Lauren, boosting her gestation speed up to 133%. Shortly after, Maniac's regeneration coma comes to an end, and the one pawn who's been with us for all 3 series is back up on his feet. Kojiro is removed from his prison cell and snorts some yayo to get his mood back up, and then it's time. Let's finally find out where the Archonexus is located. I actually misspoke earlier. This time, while we need to get the colony wealth to 350,000, we do not actually need to sell the colony. We can simply grab the location here and find out that it is not entirely close by. This does actually appear to be outside the range of our transport pods. Those are fired up immediately though. We send out Vulek, after all, as our moral guide. He is pretty much Elpis' second in command, and we also give him Muffalo Nibbler. Despite being injured, riding the animal will still be faster than going on foot. While the pods are loaded, we also find out that -1 is suffering from organ decay, much like Orle was. For him, both lungs and the heart are affected. Let's see if we can cure one of those with Kojiro's unnatural healing. And lovely, the heart is cured and we do have one spare lung. So shortly after the pods have been launched, Nightshade installs the new body part and ensures that -1 will survive, even if the other lung will likely remain this way, since we cannot manufacture a replacement ourselves. Vulek and Nibbler then land as far as the drop pod can carry them. They will have to go on foot the rest of the way. This will take them roughly 1 day of traveling. Our colony spends this day mostly doing cleanup and repairs. Thanks to her vastly increased gestation speed, Lauren quickly brings back the 2 lifter bots Axme 24 and Starburst, and we also give Kojiro his role as production specialist back. Losing it has caused him a bit of a mood penalty. That is now removed as he reassumes the role, and well, that already brings us close to the end. We take one last look at our sea ice colony of Amandum here, before Vulek and Nibbler finally reach the Archonexus. What they find is a map sprawling with anima trees, the Archonexus core right at its center, surrounded by many architect structures and a whole lot of mechanoids. So, best we not wake them up just yet. Nibbler is being roped to a hitching spot far away and Vulek stands guard, while our pawns back home all assemble around the comatose body of -1. This includes all mechanoids as well as the 2 remaining Muffalos, Dot and David, but for both mechs and animals, this will be goodbye. Where we are going, or rather how we're going there, they will not be able to join us. Sadly, also not joining us will be the Centurion we've been so busy gestating. Despite Lauren's upgrades, finishing it would take several more days, so we're leaving it behind to perhaps one day join the other mechs. Maybe an answer to the question where all of those mech hives and clusters come from. Our colonists, meanwhile, assemble around leader Elpis, who now casts Fast Skip to get everyone to Vulek, and thus to the Archonexus. And there we are. Everyone but our mechs and the 2 Muffalos arrive safely, and now it's only a matter of getting past the mechanoids. And, well, I think we've fought enough in today's episode, so let's solve this differently. Maniac drops his shield belt to give it to Elpis, who then approaches the ring of anima trees and uses his skip psycast to get to the Archonexus core. The mechs wake up as soon as he gets too close, but they're just a little too late. Their shots either miss or get blocked by the shield, and Elpis reaches the Archonexus before anyone can stop him. And even though Elpis continues to get attacked here, this is where his and where our story ends. I do have one last gift for you though. I made a little outro/credit roll myself to thank everyone who contributed to this series, and I have the absolute pleasure to announce that I received permission to use a very special piece of music for this. The song is called Maschine, Machine in English, and it is by the German indie pop band Graustufe West. When I first heard this song a few months back, I was absolutely blown away by how well it fit the tone of this series. You'll find a rough translation in the comments, and I contacted them to ask for permission to use it in this final video. They agreed, and so here we are. Another adventure comes to an end, and this one gets its very own soundtrack. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the journey, as well as this final episode, and if you did, I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing, you can subscribe to the channel, become a channel member or a Patreon supporter, or grab some of the new items over on shop.petecomplete.com. Thank you all so much for watching this 5th Rimworld series on the channel. Enjoy these last few minutes, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.
einer eiskalten Nacht erschien es in der Dunkelheit. Meine Augen waren wach und ich konnte nicht betrunken sein. Die Menschen suchten Schutz und alle Bunker waren voll. Nur ich stand alleine da und hab das alles nicht gewollt. Oh, wie im Wahn, wie im Wahn, wie im Wahn starrte ich den Himmel an. Oh, wie warm, oh, wie warm, oh, wie warm, was als die Maschine.